Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Training, Learning, and Development community. Thanks for joining us today. We've got another episode in our Success Stories series, Teacher to Trainer. In this episode, our guest is Alison Sollars. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
It's Sollars.
Sollars. Okay. Sollars. Alison Sollars. Thanks. So this series is actually for to kind of like promote an event that we have at the end of this month, which is our transitioning to L&D event. You can go to www.t2ld.com. Let me type that in chat, t2ld.com. If you'd like to learn more about that live virtual conference. It is free. There are two ticket types available. There's a free ticket, which, help yourself. Absolutely. There's also a donation ticket, which is totally optional. I use that just to kind of pay the bills around here. I only mention it because there was a conversation on LinkedIn about it recently. So I just want to make sure people understand there is always going to be that free option for these types of events. So please sign up if you can. It's going to be fun. It's an entire week. August 29th to September 2nd. We have like a session planned for every day, like at least one or two sessions planned for every day. And then some virtual tables will be set up. It should be really, really fun. And with that, I'm going to move into asking a few questions to our guest, Alison, about her experience transitioning from being a teacher to an L&D professional. And I have a set of questions that are down in the at the bottom of the screen in the Ask a Question area. And let's start out with Alison. Your career in education, where did it begin?
So I was actually an accidental teacher. I worked in marketing during the Great Recession and I got laid off. I was in like really early in my career, my first couple of years of my career, and there were no marketing jobs in 2009. So a friend of mine had been teaching overseas and was leaving her job in South Korea. And my first teaching job was actually in South Korea, teaching at an elementary school, an international elementary school that did a primary international baccalaureate curriculum. And that really got me interested in pedagogy and really interested in like human development. But that was not what my degree was in. My degree was in English, but in writing specifically and in marketing. So that was kind of a new direction for me because I live in Florida. When I returned, it was really easy for me to get alt certified. Florida's done alternative certifications for decades now. And because I have an English degree, it was easy to get like highly qualified certification with a few courses. And I started in middle school reading. And I taught middle school reading, middle school ESOL and English and yearbook and creative writing and a few other things. And then the last 6 years, I've been at an international baccalaureate high school in the same public district. This is all the same district. And I've taught like IB English, AP English, and an IB career elective. So I've kind of like bounced around and done a lot of things. I did an educational leadership master's in there too, just kind of looking for what do I want to do next, like interest in gifted education, interest in like organizational leadership and education, but none of that really kind of gelled with me in my district. And so that's how I kind of wound up getting into L&D. I've just always been really interested in like cognitive science and like research-based practices and been kind of a nerd, I guess. So
Yeah,
it's been a kind of falling into different situations and opportunities all throughout the way.
that's a potent mix, with the English degree and the marketing background. And now education, and then moving into instructional design. It seems like all of those things like kind of apply to what you're probably doing now. That's a good background to have.
Yeah, I used to do like a little technical writing and like web design on the side and stuff. I didn't know instructional design existed until like I knew curriculum design existed for like K-12s. And I knew training existed because actually in between coming back from Korea and going into my school district while I was getting all my requirements in a row, I worked as an operational manager and I did like training through HR for an event management company. And I trained and hired staff and conducted workshops and so forth. But like nobody really thought about like learning design in the design of those courses. I mean, maybe I did, but not consciously, So I knew that like companies trained people, but I just didn't really know the mechanics of it and how intense it could be outside of like government work.
Right. So talk about the shift. Like, what exactly, like, when did you find instructional design and why? And how did you go about, like, whoa, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to jump into.
So I've always done kind of side stuff, like I said, and I was looking to replace some income because we lost some stipends and so forth. And I was like, well, I could do some content development. Like everybody needs curriculum stuff. I could do some English content development. I do some for AP now for my district. Like I do some other stuff. I make resources that people use all the time. Somebody will pay me to do this, but I didn't want to make stuff for teachers pay teachers for the same reason that I don't like charge for anything now. And that I work with Sarah at Teaching as a Pathway to Learning and Design is I don't want to charge teachers money for anything. So I kind of looked into like contract work with like curriculum development in English. And then as I was looking into that, I found Storyline and I like got a trial and played around with it. I spent like 100 hours in it over winter break, just like making stuff and doing like e-learning heroes. And then I was like, this is an actual like career. Like you could go into learning and development and like be a learning professional and just help companies train people and improve human performance. And that was, I guess, how I found it. And then when I started looking at it more, I was like, this is what I learned in my educational leadership masters, because educational leadership is for K-12, but it's kind of like, it has some stuff that they pull from MBA programs for leadership and a lot of stuff that they pull that's human performance development, because the main kind of resource in schools is staff. And in staffing development I was like 9 of my 14 courses in educational leadership were focused on improving staff performance. So we did a whole capstone that like went through Kirkpatrick. We didn't call it Kirkpatrick, but like when I read about that, I was like, oh, wow. So I kind of just found it. I had never been on LinkedIn. I had never like looked for anything like this. And then I found like, I was like, oh, okay, well, there's not very many jobs near me. So I guess this isn't really a viable option. And then somebody mentioned like, oh, but there's a lot of remote jobs. And like when I switched the LinkedIn to remote, I was like, oh, there's a lot of options. My husband also works as a faculty trainer for a local university. So like my first thought was like, maybe I could do something like that someday, like if there's an opening, but there's like 3 universities, not a ton of openings. I don't want to work in his department, So I think that was just the big explosion in January. I just found that out and I was just like, well, I guess this is what I want to do now.
Right. So it's relatively recent that you've kind of formally made this switch over.
Yeah, I started looking in January and I got a job that started in March.
Wow. And so now you are actually working as an L&D professional now, right?
Yeah, I'm a learning experience designer for Landmark Health, which is a part of United Health Group.
Okay, excellent. Anything about your experience so far that has surprised you?
I think what surprised me is how much, especially like in healthcare, how much aligns to education, especially like thinking at the organizational like leadership level, like because I kind of wore that hat in education too, not just the classroom. And so like when you think about like mentoring and like training new teachers, which I did a lot of, like training staff that I do, we do, you do, the like preceptor programs and the like coaching programs are a lot like student teaching programs. There's a lot of parallels that I didn't expect to be there. Like everything's got different names, right? Like we call everything by a million different names in education, even like between districts. So I'm used to that. But being able to see those connections, I think healthcare was a good choice and a good field for me in that way, because it does have that like, I work with clinical educators who do have a kind of similar feeling and background that I had. And like, maybe we're nurses and teachers have a lot in common. So, but that's been really surprising because I felt like it would be more different in the mindsets that people have, but I feel like the mindset is very similar. I think that also is because I come from a really big district.
But what has been kind of like the biggest adjustment so far, you think?
The biggest adjustment, I think, was just, so it's a completely different way of working, right? Like remote work compared to like the day-to-day schedule. So just like getting your footing in a new institution remotely and like figuring out like, who do I ask for this? Like I had a lot of institutional knowledge, even moving from school to school. I've been in the same school for 6 years in the same district for 10 years. So like I knew where to go for everything. Like I was the person people came to. And going into a new situation, a new field, a new role, a new company, my original manager left after a month, and we had like a little bit of turnover too, which like kind of probably exacerbated this for me. But like knowing and being able to like reach out to everybody and just being willing to like admit all the stuff you need to know and that people need to give you and you don't know, I think is a new adjustment, and having to kind of like find all that institutional knowledge, like acronyms when people are saying it and things like that.
Right. No, that's interesting. And in fact, there is one session in particular. I think it's Matt Vosmick, who's in the audience right now, who's going to be talking about that, kind of going from academia and higher ed into kind of more the business oriented side of instructional design and being able to speak that language instead. Was that hard for you to pick up, or did it take a while?
Some of it was hard and some of it wasn't. So I would say the healthcare specific jargon is a little bit tricky and challenging sometimes, that like I'm still getting used to. The instructional design stuff was not as hard for me when I started seeing it, because I could see the parallels really clearly. But some of the like businessy stuff, like the organizational stuff, is just, it's hard to change that mindset a little bit. When you think about learners, like the teacher mindset of thinking about learners, even in staff training, is a little bit different than I would say the business mindset and thinking about learners. And what is the goal of learning and kind of that problem solution. I think it's really satisfying because you get closer to the problem solution than you do. Like education's so broad, and like you don't get to see the solution usually, or you see the solution, but you don't see the initial problem because you taught people at the end, or you're at the end of staff training phase.
Yeah.
But getting to be really close to that problem solution is definitely an adjustment that is both exciting and sometimes scary, because I mean, the problem has to be solved. And if you don't, and sometimes people want you to solve problems with training that can't be solved with training.
Yeah.
Which happens in schools too. But, I think that it's a different sort of world and mindset.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. No, I think I see like Danny's in the audience. He would be able to definitely speak to that. There's a question in here that I kind of want to ask you that Cindy has posted. It's a great question. What do you wish you would have known before starting your teaching career that may have changed your career choice?
I wish I had known instructional design was a job, because I probably would have gone into L&D or instructional design rather than teaching.
Right.
I did like teaching. It's not like I didn't like teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it, especially the past 6 years. Like being an AP Lit teacher was like one of my goals, and I got to do that, and I got to work with amazing students in my IB program, and like the career program I run, I got to work with students like for 3 years in a row sometimes, like, the same students, and build those relationships, which was amazing. Mm-hmm. So those experiences were great, but I think I could have also had great experiences in L&D, and it would have been maybe a smarter career move, both financially and like for my ultimate goals, I think. Just because I didn't really have a goal and floated along a lot in education. I did a lot of things and a lot of extras, but it wasn't like for myself. It was just like, this needs to be done, so I'm going to do it. And taking more control of my career and being like, this is what I want for my professional development. This is what I want for my skills, is something that I really didn't start doing until I made this transition.
Right. When I think about it, like when I was in high school, whatever, forever ago, there was a career day, that we had career days where we wanted to kind of explore what careers were available to us, but there was never any, option for like anybody, like a guidance counselor saying, hey, have you ever thought about instructional design or a career in learning and development? There was never anything like that. There were definitely things like, here, learn how to be an engineer, learn how to be a teacher, and all of these things. But instructional design almost feels like it was like hidden away. Or I don't know. I wonder why that is.
And I can tell you, like, when I told people like what I really wanted to do when I was like laid off from marketing, because I liked marketing, but I wasn't like my end all be all. I was like, what I really want to do is be a professional problem solver. So like, I really feel like that's what instructional designers do at the heart of it. Like, yes, it's about learning science and human performance, but at the heart of it, we get to be professional problem solvers.
Yeah, Allison, I think I have a feeling you're going to be an incredible instructional designer. I can already tell just the way that you talk that you're going to do really, really well at this. So, as far as your career choice is concerned, any like lessons that you've learned that you'd like to share, like any to teachers that are transitioning into this field? Is there anything specific that you could share about that?
I think the biggest thing is to start looking at the problem solution in your day to day and like look at why you're actually doing what you're doing. I think design at every level, any kind of design, like even if you want to go into UX design or something else, design is about the why. So why is this the way that it is? And is it working the way that it is? Or if we need to change it, what needs to be changed and why? So looking at your whys and looking at like your pain points and your problems and how did you work to solve that and capturing that data. Data analysis was huge in my district because we are so large and so businessy almost. Like in Florida, there's a lot of emphasis on data and the large districts especially. And I was always able to like win arguments with data, kind of. Like, I don't mean to say them like arguments, but sometimes there would be a disagreement on what would be the best path, and I would know my path was best, but I wouldn't. Teachers don't have the benefit of people taking their word for it. You have to prove everything, basically.
Right.
So I think that data analysis piece was really helpful. And I know a lot of teachers who can do that, but they don't realize that's a useful business skill too.
Right.
And how do I translate that into business? They're not capturing their metrics. So capturing their metrics and looking at the problems that they're solving from that problem solution. That's really hard for teachers to do a lot of the time because you want to be student-centered. You want to be whole student-centered. And I very much believe education should be that way too. Like when I taught in my classes and I pulled that data, I had to put on like a separate hat almost because I know that kids aren't data. They aren't data. They're kids and they need to be nurtured like kids. But at the same time, if you have to convince somebody 4 levels up the chain that they need to do the thing that's best for those kids, you have to separate that out. And I think that compartmentalization is what helped me a lot and what teachers often struggle with, but can do if they just wear the different hat and like, you know, accept that you're in a different role when you're making that conversation.
Yeah. And it's always so satisfying too when you actually have the data to prove something that you are wanting to get done and you can actually present it and show everybody. Now I want to give you a little time to talk about teaching a path to learning and development, Sarah's group. Talk about your role there.
So I've done a couple of different things there. I mean, my role has kind of evolved. I'm the community manager there, so I post daily. So you'll see me. That's why I'm so active on LinkedIn, is people will see me posting because I post daily, almost daily in the group. And we have like different themes for the days that Sarah developed years ago that are still going. Like, so today's Wednesday. So it's like, what you're working on Wednesday, and people can go and get feedback. And we have other people who come in who are in field who give feedback that's great, and then there's peer feedback, and I try to give feedback on things that people have. You know, we try to give tips on Thursdays, different things that we try to do. We had a mentoring program that's been a little bit suspended because we're working on a project now to try to get kind of a course of study together of like, here are the basics. Here are the basic areas you might want to learn about for instructional design. I almost liken it to like the Google like courses where they're like kind of introductory, like to project management or introductory. I mean, I don't think it's going to be as good as that on the first go, but we're going to iterate and make them better, but just so it's free. Because there's a lot of content out there that's not curated that people ask us for. And it's like, how do we get this together for everybody? So trying to curate, trying to develop some content of our own and just get people resources that is maybe more guided, because teachers often want a guided process. They're very busy. They don't have a lot of money. So how can we help them with that? To kind of maybe support so that they don't, I think if anybody wants to hire paid services because it works for them, that's fine. But so that they don't have to do that, so that they can get what they need for free.
Right. And just so that for the folks that don't know what that group is, can you explain?
So we have a website called Teach Learn Dev, where you can find us there. And it's got some of Sarah's webinars from a few years ago, which was really the start and the origin of it. And then we have a really active LinkedIn group, Teaching as a Pathway to Learning and Development. It is really focused on instructional design currently, because that's what Sarah does and also what most of our volunteers do, including myself. But someday maybe we will branch out to corporate training or training coordinators, other aspects of L&D, to try to support those as well. And we do have members who come from all ranges of train, like there's active members who are corporate trainers or in other areas of learning and development, or even like UX or other areas kind of tangentially related. And we try to curate resources and support, like give community support, have events. I'm trying to have a resume workshop in September probably, because that was the kind of voted on topic. So trying to hold events and just support teachers in this journey in a way that is organized without them having to pay for it.
No, that's great. I think that that's definitely aligns with sort of some of the things that we're trying to produce on the TLDC side. Just gather volunteers to help teachers sort of transition into this space, and so it's great. I would happily promote your group if you'd like. Let me see here. Let me go back to your career stuff now. So now you're an instructional designer. What is like your daily schedule like?
So I actually posted last Thursday, and I'm going to try to post once a week on LinkedIn about this. Like I'm going to post sample days because I don't really have a set daily schedule. We don't have like a daily huddle or anything. We have weekly meetings, usually on Thursdays, but like this week it's today. So it can be really variable. We're very communicative on our Teams chat and we're remote, but like I talk to my boss and my teammates quite frequently, like throughout the day, I would say. We are across time zones. So some of us are East Coast, some of us are West Coast, some in the middle. And so it's a matter of like, you have to be pretty communicative, update your projects on the project board, like reach out to people and send them things via Teams and email. But I spend a lot of my time working on e-learning development, I would say. But I also develop built virtual instructor-led trainings. My big project recently has been like a technical training project that's had multiple courses, both ILT format and e-learning. So like working with SMEs on that. But usually you have 2 to 3 projects going at a time, and they can vary from job aids to e-learning to kind of workshops and even other weird solutions and so forth. So it's pretty varied. I am a morning person, so I'll sometimes start early and end a little early, or, work through lunch and end a little early, or take a long lunch to run an errand. So it's remote, it's flexible, which is nice a little bit. But basically 8 to 5, and just kind of usually spending, I would say 60 to 70% of my time on developing, whether it's slide decks or job aids or e-learning. And then like 20 to 30% on like storyboarding, working with SMEs, kind of getting that information I need, because development just takes so much longer, than the design part, I feel like. And we design kind of iterative. So a lot of the writing is back and forth in the development process. I would say we use more SAM than ADDIE, but it depends.
Right.
And then like maybe 10% on like project management, administration, like just the basic stuff. And then, 5% on professional development and like stuff that I'm just like learning new tools or new things just to continue to keep up with.
Is that variety something that you really like, or is it challenging for you?
No, I love the variety. I like the variety of topics too. Like healthcare, we have technical trainings, we have clinical trainings, we have interpersonal trainings and leadership trainings and DEI trainings. Like I love that there's been such a variety that even so far I've gotten to work on, and a variety of like tools, and techniques as well, where they're like, this is a scenario, or this is a simulation, or, this is just a straightforward like workshop that a SME is going to deliver, but they want some like more organized information and a job aid to go with it. Like I like that there's that range.
How would you compare that level of variety versus like your work as a teacher?
I had a lot of variety as a teacher because I did teach a lot of different courses. Like some teachers teach the same thing all day, but I usually had 2 or 3 preps and different periods. And I would like change. I changed throughout my like 10 years teaching grade levels and courses in schools. And I also would change like my curriculum for AP and IB almost every year to refine it and so forth. So there was a lot of variety there, but there wasn't a lot of variety in like what I was. Even if I was like doing different things, I still had to do like 30 hours of facilitation a week. So it was very much like scheduled and down to the minute. And so I like the kind of flexibility and the ability to work how my brain works that works really well for instructional design. And also I
Nice.
was overworking because I was always taking on more projects. It would be like, we need this staff training. But of course I don't have time in my regular day to do it. So you do it for like either a stipend, or which is much less than your regular rate, or like sometimes for free. And there was a lot of like working off the clock as a teacher just
Right.
to
No,
put out quality work.
I've definitely heard that. I've definitely heard that. I've got a couple questions from chat here. What do you feel was the thing that helped you the most transfer from a teacher to ID? That one's from Nikki Brubaker.
I think there were two things that really helped me. One was technical skills. I think that technical skills and tools are not the end all be all, but I do think that if you're trying to move fields, that's an easy thing to show proof of. Like, it's hard to show proof of some other things, but it's easy to show proof you can use a tool. And that is one thing that people are wondering. So I always do advise people work on their technical skills, even though I don't think it's the meat of what we do. I do think it is one of the easier things to showcase. And then two, I think what really helped me was that I had that kind of ability to switch into that organizational thinking from like my educational leadership and some corporate work that I've done before, like the ability to see kind of like that bigger picture of how I fit into my school and like how I had solved problems. So I think most teachers are solving problems who want to transition. I think they have a lot of that trait, but they sometimes don't give themselves the credit for it or know how it fits into the bigger picture. So it's just taking that step back and being able to like kind of translate. I think those were the two things that really helped me.
Wow, that's great. So, just a little bit, and it kind of, this aligns a little bit with this next question. Another one from Cindy Nagel. What is in your developer toolbox? And also, when you answer that, okay, when did you get into like, using tools? Is that something that you've always been comfortable with, like building stuff, like using technology?
Yeah, so I hadn't found Storyline until recently because that's kind of an ID specific thing, but I had used Adobe Creative Suite prior in my marketing days, even all the way back then.
Yeah.
I used to make websites in Adobe Dreamweaver. I knew HTML, CSS, and then I brushed up on it this year because I really like, I would like jailbreak the LMS sometimes and like do HTML, CSS things like when they had locked fonts and I didn't want them to and so forth. So I used it occasionally, but I didn't like, it wasn't necessary. It wasn't something that I needed as a teacher, but I would just like, I like making things. And so I was always making things and kind of using new technology even then. And like LMS, like training and stuff like that. Like I was, at the forefront of like, my district had been 1-to-1 since 2016. So like I was at the forefront of like ed technology. But then Storyline, like I learned that in December and I think you have to think of it in hours rather than years is the thing I sometimes tell people. I spent like 100 hours on it in 2 weeks the first time that I did it. So like I really like dove into it because it was really fun for me. Like I like, drag and drop programming and things like that. So it's been something that I enjoy, but these tools, some of them are new to me, but it's just a matter of like, if you've used other tools, sometimes it's easier to pick them up, I think, than if you haven't. Videos, I've made videos for the classroom for a long time, flipped classrooms and stuff. And like any kind of timeline editing software is pretty similar to other timeline. I mean, there's differences and there's things you can learn that are really cool and neat, but like you can pick them up more easily if you've used one, I think.
So currently in your developer toolbox, Storyline, anything else?
Storyline, Camtasia. I've used Beyond, Adobe Creative Suite. I'm not a master of every Adobe Creative Suite app because there's so many, but like Photoshop, Illustrator, XD, a little bit of InDesign. Canva, I will sometimes use instead of Adobe Creative Suite just because it's simpler for like quick things. Like if I'm going to make something to attach to it, like LinkedIn group post, I'm probably not going to go to Photoshop and spend 3 hours on it. I'm probably going to spend 10 minutes in Canva and just like crank it out. HTML, CSS, and a little bit of web design. I would say that's my main toolbox. And there's like other, like, I've played around with iSpring Suite. I like tools to play around with just so that when somebody asks me something, I know the right solution. Like, I don't think the tool really matters, but I do think that if you know a lot of tools like, oh, Twine would be good for that, or HP5 would be good for that, especially when you're looking for kind of creative solutions for people like teachers who are looking for maybe some free things or other things that aren't as expensive as Storyline, because it is quite cost prohibitive.
Yeah. It almost seems like you've been an instructional designer for a really long time and just didn't realize it.
I mean, I kind of feel that way sometimes. I definitely thought there was big gaps and things to learn, right? Like, so there's definitely so much that's different. But the way that I mean, curriculum design was always my favorite part of teaching. And I was always the teacher that was like making curriculum, and people were like, can I just use your stuff? I don't want to make stuff. Can I just use your lessons? And like doing weird technical things like to kind of make it better. So I think it was just like, I found the thing that I was meant to find just like after a very long circuitous journey.
Right. All right. Last question for you. What do your future goals look like?
I do want to get a terminal degree someday. That was actually one of the reasons I left education, because I realized I would never be able to afford a PhD on an educator's salary. And my district didn't pay enough to make it worth it to get a doctorate. So I would like to get either a doctorate or an MBA someday. I haven't completely decided, but I'm leaning more towards a PhD in like human performance, and looking at those programs. So that is my long-term goal, like far out. I really, really would like to do that. And just like solve bigger and better problems, and help a community of teachers find what's right for them, whether it's instructional design or something else.
That's great. Wow, Alison. What a fascinating conversation. I do wonder, like, you were talking about mentorship and stuff earlier. Is that something that you're actively doing now?
I feel a little too early to like officially mentor too many people. And I also like, I develop a lot of resources and like things at a little bit more scale, I would say, to be used. But I do mentor a few people kind of unofficially, I guess, that I've worked with. Like, and sometimes I'll spot people, especially when I spot people from my district that I know have been looking for a little while. I'll be like, hey, like, let's look at your resume. Let's figure out what's going on. And over the summer, I was able to help a couple people get opportunities and just kind of fill in that missing step, right? Like that last kind of piece. They had the skills, they had everything there. People just weren't seeing it yet. So how can we make people see it? But I don't think I'm like there to mentor in like building all of the skills yet on my own. I try to help and support Sarah in doing that, and the community, because, you know, I am only 6 months into this job. And even though I have a wealth of like, I think, valuable experience, I also really value the people and the voices that have been in the community a long time, but they don't have time to help everybody. So I just try to kind of facilitate and connect people and share the good advice that I've gotten. And I got a lot of mentorship, especially in January and February when I was looking. I had people who did, you know, coffee chats with me, who shared leads with me, who really supported me. And so I try to just do the same.
That's great. Oh, it's so good to hear it. You do have a lot of valuable experience, a wealth of it. So it's pretty amazing. Alison, thank you so much for doing this. And I want to mention also, you volunteered to do like a virtual table during that week of the event. Schedule is still TBD. But at some point, people might be able to kind of meet up with you and just sort of chat in one of our virtual tables for that week.
Yeah, I want to try to maybe give you a couple of times. I'll send you that. And then like maybe you can do some like group sessions for just what are people's individual needs? You know, how can I help on this transition and journey?
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, Alison, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for showing up today. Don't forget, if you haven't already registered for the event, just go to t2ld.com for a transitioning to learning and development virtual event that takes place August 29th through September 2nd. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks everybody.
Nice to speak with you.
All right. Bye.